Hello YouTube and welcome to an all new Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're talking about the language of the Khajiit named Ta'agra. This is a video in my Languages of Tamriel series. If you want to know more about, for example, the Elvish language, Argonian language or the languages of men, check out the link to the playlist in the description. Also, the voice that you may be hearing from time to time in this video is the voice of my friend Nerddragon, who helped me immensely with this video. He doesn't have a channel of his own, but he is great at pronouncing this kind of foreign words in the language of the Khajiit. So I just asked him to do it since I'm the worst at pronunciation. I mean, just hear my English. So, that being said, now let's immediately talk about the Khajiiti language. The Khajiit are an ancient race with a truly fascinating culture. If we were to discuss all aspects of their culture, this video would probably last for about a week. But today we'll focus on their language. We've got quite a few pieces of lore to explore about the language, so in this video I'll give you a broad overview of Ta'agra, so the Khajiiti language, some of its grammar rules and some of its peculiarities. So, as I said before, the Khajiiti language is called Ta'agra. It's a highly melodic, guttural and expressive language. One of the most recognizable features of Ta'agra, and the one that most Elder Scrolls fans are probably most familiar with, is the use of the third person to refer to oneself. Be it via the Khajiit's name by referring to the race, or by using this one. Examples of this are when, for example, J'zargo says, "J'zargo is an accomplished destruction mage," or the famous sentence, "Khajiit has wares if you have coin," which is spoken by Khajiit traders all around Tamriel. And also in something like, "This one is glad to be of help." So that's all referring to oneself in the third person. Other notable features of Ta'agra include the frequent uses of the letters J, R and S. The J is often always a soft one, not being pronounced like a hard J like in Jane, Jade and so on. A hard J would often, but not always, happen with the inclusion of the letter H after it. S is also a very frequently used letter, and it's very often frequently treated as its own syllable, marked with an apostrophe like in the word surrender. Talking about apostrophes, they themselves are also a very common sight in Ta'agra, and the R is basically always a rolled one, and I really can't do it, but you'll hear some of them in Mr. Nerddragon's voice clips later on. An interesting grammatical feature of Ta'agra is its sentence structure. In English the verb comes before the subject, but in Ta'agra the verb comes after it. For example, the sentence
Zwinfodurar Rabi
translates to "I have a yellow writing utensil, so a quill." But the most literal translation without adapting the sentence structure would be "yellow writing utensil have" in the first person. In other words, the Ta'agra sentence structure is verb, subject, object instead of subject, verb, object, which brings me to the real life inspiration to Ta'agra, which is probably Arabic, because Arabic also follows the same sentence structure, and it's both thematically and phonetically similar to Ta'agra. So Mr. Nerddragon and I presume that it's a direct inspiration. Now, we'll cover some of the more important words in Ta'agra and also some of their name conventions. Starting with the word Khajiit. It's a composite of two words, kash meaning sand and it is a suffix that indicates occupation or place of residence. So the most accurate translation for Khajiit would be desert walker or desert dweller. Khajiiti names are most commonly describing the skills or abilities of those that they refer to. Family names are a rarity, and a Khajiit would make their name more unique by adding an eponym in either Ta'agra or in Tamrielic, like Ma'ik the Liar or Kreen Rendo. A big part of Khajiiti naming convention is to use honorifics. It's a reflection of their status in society and therefore may change during their life depending on the context and depending on the flow of their life. It's considered extremely rude and insulting to address someone without an honorific or without the appropriate honorific. The rule is that only one honorific may be applied at a time, although two can be used. This is rare. However, since the Khajiit believe using two honorifics is a sign of either great pride or great ignorance, it's very rare. It is also very rare for a non-Khajiit to have a Khajiiti honorific applied to their names, but when it happens it's usually when it's a very important person in Khajiiti society, such as a foreign ambassador or such whom the Khajiiti respect greatly and has an influence on their society. The honorifics are usually applied at the start of one's name, or in other words as a prefix separated from the name by an apostrophe or a hyphen. although in some cases it can be a suffix, so be placed after the name. When speaking the common language, so Tamrielic, the honorific is treated as an actual part of the name, since honorifics aren't used this way in Tamrielic. As a curiosity, this use of honorifics is very similar to the real-life Japanese language, although they apparently have their honorifics almost always at the end of the name, such as san or kun. If that's not true, you can correct me in the comments if there's also prefix versions of honorifics in Japanese. I honestly don't know, I'm not a Japanese expert. But to get back to the Khajiit language, just to show what I mean, I've got a list of Kojiti Honorifics which I'm putting on the screen now. The honorifics on the left are for males and the ones on the right are for females. As you can see, some of the Khajiit names in the games make a lot more sense now. If you look at the bottom of the list, you can see that Ri is an honorific granted to chieftains, kings and even the main. For example, Ri Saad is the chief of the merchants in Skyrim and has this honorific, as has Akuz Ri, which is the main of Elsewhere in the Elder Scrolls Online. Also in Skyrim there's a Khajiit trader called Dro Marash. We may conclude that he's an older Khajiit called Marash, who is seen as very wise or is seen as patriarch of his family, hence why he has the honorific Dro. Jazargo is a young Khajiit called Zargo who is single, and so on. Knowing this, if you know a Khajiiti name, you can actually know something about the personality or about the kind of person that the Khajiit is, depending on the honorifics that are applied to their name. Anyway, let's move on from the names for now, because there's a few instances in the game that we're actually able to read Ta'agra phrases or even hear Khajiiti speaking Ta'agra. The closest that we get to hearing an actual conversation in Ta'agra is between Cyrus and a Khajiit named Saatra in the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, in which the latter speaks Ta'agra frequently during the conversation. Here's a quick sample.
Oko Imperial ja iko pofam rotot velk.
You should know you got me the job.
Next to this conversation, there's also a few texts that we can find about Ta'agra, like the book
Azir Traji Jazeri,
that we can find in multiple Elder Scrolls games. A nice example of a complete sentence in Ta'agra would be in the burnt scripture found in the Moongrave Fane in the Elder Scrolls Online, which reads as follows.
Zengrili an Zengji Tazjadi Afa Shabar Aidifozei Zaiguti Salitatna Jadi Ranjif Adivasanirni Jadi Lurma Rajkono Viti Shabar Morna Anfsi Kajait Harifse,
which translates into Joan and Jode close their eyes, in the dreamless sleep of death they fall, until below the world they lie, forever lost in darkness, and the true moon reigns supreme. And that is basically all that I could gather from the Khajiiti language. Before the ending of the video though, I'd like to quickly recommend the site The Ta'agra Project. Like with Toom.org, which I mentioned in my Dovazul video, it's a fan-made project into the study into the existing Ta'agra fragments in the games and in the lore, and they expand on it in a believable way, creating an alphabet that, by the way, is also heavily inspired by Arabic, and creating new words. If you wish to learn more about Ta'agra in detail and some of the things that the fan community has added to the language, then I highly recommend giving the site a look. I'll put it in the description of this video. And now, before I truly end this video, allow me to say that I hope to see you again in the next Elder Scrolls lore video, and allow me to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polarized Putin, Athena Hyotis, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Sarah Mikhail and Mr. Christmas. It is thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel can stay alive, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I hope to see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.